All right, what's up? A to Z Sports Nashville, Easton Freeze here with the latest edition of our draft interview series. And I brought all my friends in because it is about that time. And the Titans are going to be on the clock here in just under 2 weeks at the time of recording, even less than that when you are seeing this on the YouTube channel. And it's time to start talking about some names, some dudes. It's time to name some guys the Titans may or may not be drafting. We know that Cam Ward's going to be the first overall pick, but beyond that, what are they going to do? They got a lot of picks. They got a lot of options on day 2 and day 3. And so I have brought in the draft war room, really, my local panel of experts, Zach Lyons, Stoney Keeley, JT Ruhnke. Fellas, hello. How are we?
I'm great.
I'm tired of mock drafts because they're all Cam Ward. So there's no more fun for the Tennessee Titans fans to see a first round mock draft only.
It's true.
Get out of your assholes and actually do 2 or 3 rounds if you're a mock drafter.
I agree. What do you think Jim Wyatt's going to do with his annual final mock draft roundup where he gets like everybody, including Vince Gill, to give an answer? Is it just going to be 79 times he types out Cam Ward?
I'm just going to respond LOL when he asked me in my DM.
I'm really debating whether I want to like throw out Colston Loveland
the second round.
No, I agree.
Jim Wyatt.
I agree. Go for the real grinders. Ask for 35 overall.
Second round.
Yeah, I agree. I might even text them recommending that because it'd be, I mean, no one's going to read the 79 person mock draft roundup where everybody says Cam Ward. So hopefully he doesn't do that. But if he does, it's a free win for all of us. We all get a mark in the win column there. So I guess that's the one upside. I want to talk about starting in the second round. Start with some guys that may or may not be there for the Titans at 35 before we talk about the potential of them moving off of that pick. Some guys that, speaking of mock drafts, the past 2 weeks or so, it seems like every mock draft on the planet, really since we've all understood that the pick is going to be Cam Ward for the Titans, I tweeted the other day, give a mouse a cookie or a first round quarterback and see how quickly they convince themselves they have to have a second round receiver. Because I think that's just the natural temptation, right? Let's give this guy as good a weapon as we possibly can now that we have him. And Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State and Luther Burden out of Missouri are the two guys that are being talked about the most right there for the Titans. So my first question is, do we really think either or both of these guys may be there for the Titans at 35? And if so, are they the kind of person that you say, you just take the guy, don't entertain trade downs, just get this guy for Cam Ward and let's move from there? We can start with you, Zach. Today's video is brought to you by our new friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. A crash can change your life forever, and help is only a click away at bartdurham.com. At Bart Durham, your big truck wreck is their fight for justice. They've been in business since 1975, so they have half a century of experience dealing with all kinds of wrecks. They're locally operated here in Capitol View, Nashville, but they can fight for anyone in Kentucky or Tennessee who's been in an auto accident. Attorneys are available to meet with you wherever is most convenient, including virtually, and you can reach the Bart Durham team 24/7 to get your legal questions answered. Just call 615-242-9000 and let Bart Durham help today.
I don't think either of them will be there. I think they're both first round talents. Luther Burden is explosive. I don't care that he's a little bit of a diva, because if you go back and watch Game Day in October of 2024, they did this huge thing about everything that he does in the Missouri community for underprivileged kids. I mean, they spent a good chunk of time on it, a whole segment about it. And just because, and I believe if I'm not mistaken, his girlfriend and his mom seem to be involved a lot. Listen, it's just life with women, I guess. I mean, like, I don't think that's really a bad thing. I mean, I think that more people should probably involve women in their decisions, because let me tell you something, my wife, her gut, 100% awesome. Like,
is that right?
I mean, like, I trust her gut more than I trust my own gut. So, like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I think there's just a bunch of sexist people in the NFL, if I had to be blunt about it. And so they find this, I think they find strong women intimidating. You see how Jaden Daniels gets treated because his mom is very involved. But look, it didn't affect Jaden Daniels' ability on the field, and nothing affects Luther Burden's ability on the field. And Emeka Egbuka is probably the safest wide receiver prospect outside of Travis Hunter, in my opinion. Hard worker. And I look at it and I go, he's crisp route runner. He can do whatever he wants. He keeps his head down. He's been involved in trios of wide receivers where he's never been the best, but he's always been the safest. And so I think he's got a high floor and probably maybe in a certain situation has a really higher ceiling than what people expect. Like here at the Tennessee Titans, he could reach, stuff that he's never reached in college because he's probably wide receiver too. And so like, I think that he can play outside. He hasn't played a lot outside, but he can play outside. So to me, I don't think either of these guys are going to be there in the second round. And if they are, you're running the podium.
JT, if you had to put money on one of these guys being there at 35, is there a clear guy that you think is more or less likely to be there?
Probably Luther, just because you look like Zach said. Emeka Egbuka is the safest wide receiver in this class. He is a guy that is going to get you 600 to 700 yards easy from the slot every single year. Like Tyler Lockett type production from the get-go. That's kind of his style no matter what offense he goes to. There's no way a team like Detroit or Baltimore, like I don't see anyone looking at that talent and saying like we can't find a way to use that in our offense. And like that's the back end, right? Like I think he could go anywhere in from 15 onwards in the draft. Luther Burden, however, like there are so many different stories about his kind of mentals and his character issues and like just being a diva on and off the field, which Zach addressed some, but there are some concerns as well that show up on tape with Luther Burden. The disinterestedness in some routes where he kind of just doesn't give full effort is maybe something that teams also think is builds into that character concern. But much like Zach, I agree. It's just what you get when you get a diva type wide receiver who is so explosive with the ball in his hands. Like he wants the ball more. Like, of course, it's kind of just what you have to live with sometimes. But if I had to put money, I think Luther Burden is the guy that slips there just because he's less of a known commodity. He's less of that surefire thing. But the upside with a Luther Burden, the yak potential, the star-making type of plays that he can make, like he did in his last season, despite maybe only having a third of the yards in that miserable Missouri offense. Like he's a guy that I would, once again, not think for a second about trading back. I would run up that card, but I think he's the one. If one of them were to fall, he's the one.
Stoney, if Luther is there at 35, are you running up the card or is there any hesitation?
I'm not hesitating at all. I think the character concerns are like football on the field character stuff. Like Zach said, like the diva mentality sort of thing. I understand those questions are out there. I'm not concerned about that. If he's, got literal crimes being alleged against him, maybe that's a different story. But sure. I do think there's a scenario in which Burden falls. In all likelihood, I think they're both gone by the time we get to 35. They're both clearly first round talents. The only reason that Burden is going to be there is because teams are kind of scared off by these character concerns or whatever. But I think we're set up for a really interesting first round because if the dominoes fall a certain way, I could see one of these guys being available at 35 where, we look at how rich this edge class is. How many edge guys are going to go in the first round? What's going to happen if Amarian Hampton goes in the first round? I personally don't think Colston Loveland is a first round lock, but what if he goes in the first round? You look at the safeties. It's not a premium position, but you have super talented guys like Malachi Starks, like Nick Emenworry. What if those guys go in the first round? Eventually it becomes a numbers game where you look up and you say, oh my goodness, there's Emeka Egbuka still here at 35. Luther Burden III is still here at 35. And in that situation, yeah, for either guy, I am sprinting that card to the podium, which I don't think they actually do anymore. I think it's a phone call.
Well, to your point,
neither here nor there.
Yeah, to your point, 2019. Think about one wide receiver went in the first round, and it was N'Keal Harry, and it was the worst wide receiver taken in the first 2 days by far. Right. And there could be a situation like that because that was a year where there's a bunch of guys on the trenches and at edge. And just a few it's very eerie when you really start thinking about it, how similar the quarterback class kind of is to that class as far as the quality and how many may go in the first round. Because you're talking about Daniel Jones and Kyler Murray versus Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Both clearly are better than I think both those prospects myself. but they're the two quarterbacks, right? I mean, like those are the two guys. And then it's a bunch of guys in the trenches, a bunch of edge rushers, and the wide receivers. Some of the good wide receivers are talking about falling. And if you talk about what, hurt DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, who was the third guy that I'm just thinking of? But either way, all those guys
Terry
fell.
McLaurin, right?
Yeah. That's who it was. Terry McLaurin. See, I don't know. Terry McLaurin, Emeka Egbuka, AJ Brown, Luther Burden, DK Metcalf, Tatoria McMillan. Like I could see all three of those guys because of those certain things falling. But T-Mac's probably, and Matthew Golden's probably the guy that goes in the first round, or T-Mac's the guy that goes in the first round, and the other two fall for no reason outside of they play wide receiver, and there are better players at other positions in NFL teams' minds than those two guys, and they fit positions of needs for those teams, because those teams on the back end, these playoff teams, not a lot of them need wide receivers. I mean, most of them already have their offense on lock. So I could see them going and being a copycat league and just building through the trenches towards the end of the draft.
And if you look at the offensive tackles as well, like if Josh Simmons clears the medical, clears the character concerns, he's got first round tape. I think Josh Connerly Jr. has first round tape. There's two more spots that could potentially be gone that could kind of drive some of these surprises on down the board.
Yeah, this is perfect because this is the time of year that I start thinking a lot about what Stoney brought up, right? This idea that it is, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah the other day tweeted like, good news, I just got off the phone with agents and there are going to be 64 first round picks this year. Like we have in our minds all of these guys that are ranging from lock first round picks to probably first round picks to potential first round picks. And when you're looking at a pick like 35 for the Titans, and that's the range every year, that there are always one or two or three really surprising guys that are still on the board who we all kind of thought, well, I really thought he'd be gone on night one. And it's just a numbers game. Somebody has to fall. And two other names that I want to bring up to get y'all's thoughts on are Donovan Ezeraku and James Pierce Jr. On the edge side of things. First of all, I do think that our temptation, our collective societal temptation to get Cam Ward a weapon has made us a little bit too sure of the wide receiver pick at 35. I still think that, what we thought a month, 2 months ago about how, hey, this is a really good defensive line class and the Titans need edge really, really bad. And getting an edge rusher, that's one of the positions that, you historically need to spend a premium pick on to actually get top line production out of, because it is a really traits based position. Those two are kind of fringe first round names. I know Ezeraku recently has become more of a lock first rounder than he was previously, but what do we think about where those two guys may go? And if they are there at 35, again, I'll start with you, JT. Are you running up the card like you did with the receivers, or is it more of a question?
Well, I think instead of running up the card, maybe it's just how fast we can dial the phone number to get to the league office line.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, but that's fine.
If I'm dialing the phone super fast for Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden, I have them on speed dial for a guy like Donovan Ezeraku. Like I get the idea that the wide receiver, wanting to pair Cam with that wide receiver is great and all. But if there was a guy like Donovan Ezeraku at that type of need for the Titans, and he was there at 35, like I'm not, there's maybe no player in my mind that I would rather have than him right there at 35. Super productive in his last year of college, led the Power Four in sacks. He's a little undersized, 6'2", 248, but he's got 34.5-inch arms, and his cross chop is absolutely insane on tape. This is a guy that I think you can plug and play right from the get-go and totally revamp that pressure that you can make from the outside. He's only 21 years old as well, will be 22 at the start of the season. He's a guy that also is maybe one of my favorite run defenders out of this edge class as well. Like there's just not a limit on the good things that I can say about Donovan Ezeraku, which is why I feel like teams also will see that and see all the good things that he can do. And that's why he goes in the first. But once again, like if teams covet the potential athletic freak of a James Pierce and decide to go with him over a more known quantity in a Donovan Ezeraku, like that's where you could see him fall. And if he did, like that is just a slam dunk for me. Once again, he just kind of checks all those boxes in what the Titans are lacking at the edge position. And it would be a hell of a way to start if you get Cam in the first and are able to stay at 35 and get Donovan Ezeraku. Like we said, Harold Landry, second round Boston College edge rusher. They got rid of him earlier this year. Might as well just fix his spot with another second round Boston College edge rusher.
Yes, Stoney, is this 2025 welcome back Harold Landry? Is that what we're looking at here in Donovan Ezeraku?
I think so. I think Ezeraku has a deeper bag as a pass rusher than Harold Landry did. Harold Landry, some good bend, some good power, but Ezeraku flashes a good long arm, a good speed to power. He can swim over an offensive tackle. Like JT said, I think he's a little bit undersized, but and he can be aggressive, overly aggressive sometime, where he's just pursuing the quarterback and then realizes like, oh, they handed the ball off and now I'm already 5 yards upfield. I got to turn around and get back to the play. There's some issues with that over aggression there, but I like Ezeraku quite a bit. I'm kind of scared of James Pierce at 35, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because he's been a puzzling prospect because the character concerns are kind of vague. There's a lot of hearsay of like all this crazy stuff you hear on the message boards and stuff like that. And people seem to default to, well, he's a character guy. If you can deal with the character issues, you've got a great athlete. But I think there are some concerning things on his tape just from a play standpoint as well. I noticed a lot of missed arm tackles. I don't think he's very active with his hands. He rushes a little too high at times and can get stonewalled pretty easy. I think his game kind of needs a little refinement. I think he needs to show a little more decisiveness as a pass rusher with a plan to the quarterback. But you see the length, you see the burst, the athleticism, and it's enough to drool over. I'm kind of leaning more towards getting one of these more polished guys at 35 if they're leaning edge rusher.
Zach, correct me if you disagree, but making the Harold Landry comp is really easy from a historical standpoint for Ezeraku. I agree with Stoney that Ezeraku feels like a more complete player to me. Honestly, a guy like Pierce feels more like Landry in the sense that it's pure speed rusher, limited, worried about when they may lose that one really great trick that they have in the NFL, what becomes of them then. I think that's kind of the defining distinction between these two to me.
Yeah, I would say that you're right. Like Ezeraku is he's a way better pass rusher than Harold Landry ever dreamed about being coming out of college. And I thought Harold Landry was a good pass rusher. But I look at James Pierce and I kind of go back and forth on my evaluation from him because like Stoney said, the production is there, the athleticism is there, but then I go back to his frame. And I'm like, is his frame, how much strength and muscle can you add to his frame that's not already there? Is he getting close to reaching his body limit? And then if you add all that, whatever you do add, does that take away what makes James Pierce special? And is he willing to get in the, these physical situations, with these stronger, better NFL players and willing to fight through and trying, because the arm tackle thing is concerning, right? Like I look at James Pierce and I think, man, am I underselling what he was able to put on tape from a pass rushing standpoint, or am I overestimating the freak athletic ability? Like I don't know. And like I kind of look at like with Shamar Stewart, I know I'm not drafting Shamar Stewart. Like there's nothing you guys can do to convince me that Shamar Stewart is good because he can't finish. And if you can't finish in college, what makes me think that you're going to be able to finish in the NFL? And to me, I look at James Pierce and I'm like, we've seen him finish. He just never has done it consistently. He was considered. I remember our friend Justin Mello in one of his mock drafts over the summer had him as the number 1 overall pick to the Tennessee Titans, number 1 overall. Now we're talking that some people have him in the 60s on their big board. Some people think that he's going to fall out of the first round completely. And I'm thinking and looking at it and going, that's kind of what his tape shows, is that you don't know what the fuck you're going to get week to week with James Pierce. It drove me and Blaine insane because it kind of like was the evaluation of Nico throughout the week, or throughout the year was like, okay, this is going to be the dominant James Pierce game, and now he's going to be consistent. Then he'd have a dominant game, and then he disappears, and then you hear stuff that he's a loner on the sidelines, and all the stuff that you're hearing is stuff that's been going on since he entered the program. So it's never changed. Unlike Tavondre Sweat, who matured and became a leader, it never changed for James Pierce. And I look at it and go, I would take both wide receivers that we just talked about a few minutes ago over both these edge rushers, but I would take Donovan Ezeraku and I would look at James Pierce and I'd go, can't I get Josiah Stewart, David Walker, Tyler Barron, Elijah Roberts, Ashton Gelati, someone else, and probably get the same production? Or should I just be trade back? Like, if James Pierce is the only option, is there a trade back opportunity? And maybe I take a Landon Jackson plus someone else. Like, this is totally different from a couple of days ago. And I think Stoney said it best, is that you're kind of all over the map. Every day is a new evaluation of James Pierce in my head. And that's not good. That should not be how you are the draft process. So that tells me more about the prospect than it does about me.
If you're schizophrenic about a prospect at this point on the 14th of April, it's probably not a good thing about that guy. I want to transition to just naming some dudes in the second round, and then on the second and third round, and then on day 3 as well. Because I think it'd be great to just get some names out there for the audience so they can kind of keep tabs on some guys we think would be great, or maybe some bad fits with the Titans too, if people have some strong opinions. But first, lightning round question. How likely do you feel like you are going to be when we get to pick 35 to be hoping that they find a trade back? Anybody?
So basically, like, I'm 50-50. Like, okay. It really just depends if, like, one of those wide receivers or Donovan Ezeraku is there. Like, I don't know if I can, like,
so it's basically there's like a handful of guys that we're going to not want to say no to, but otherwise it's all full steam ahead trade back.
Yeah.
I think that's just the way to look at it, because you would have to tell me who's on the board,
right, and
all this kind of stuff, because there could be other guys that fall. And because, like, look, if Colston Loveland is there, I don't know if I would trade back, even if all these wide receivers and edge rushers are off the board. I'd be like, I don't know. I think I would take Colston Loveland at 35.
Yeah, he sure does.
I mean, like, he kind of does everything good, and you need a tight end that does everything good, not a tight end that only shows up 8 weeks out of the year, and then the other one who just shows up in training camp. Like, you need a tight end just as bad as you need a wide receiver, and because when you're playing 11 personnel, 11P stands for one running back and one tight end. And if that one tight end is Colston Loveland, I'm feeling a lot better about that team.
All right, Stoney, get us started here. Let's say that there's not a trade back. You got to have a dance partner. It just doesn't come to fruition. All the good players are gone, it turns out, at 35. Real bummer, or at least in the eyes of the rest of the league. But we, the Sharps here at our consulting firm, have identified some players maybe a little bit further down the consensus board who are some hear me out guys. Some you're pounding the table in the draft war room saying, guys, not only should we take this guy here, we're getting a value for this guy here.
Yeah, I would lead off with Landon Jackson. I feel like I'm a little higher on Landon Jackson, the edge rusher out of Arkansas, than a lot of folks are. He was kind of it was one of those deals for me where I kind of grew to really appreciate and like the prospect the more of him that I watched, because I don't think he had a particularly impactful Senior Bowl week. I don't know if he was down there like working on a specific technique. You hear about that with guys sometimes where it's like, I'm not going to play my game because my game's on tape. I'm going to show you that I'm capable of evolving and doing this other thing that you say I can't do well, and I can improve upon that. I don't know if that was the case with him or not, but leading off with the Oklahoma State game on his tape, I felt like, man, this is a really good power rusher, a good speed to power guy, kind of, singular skill set of just power, bull rush, speed to power, that sort of thing. But then he goes to the scouting combine and he tests pretty well. And then I go back to the tape and I watch a little more, and I caught myself watching the LSU game, watching him go toe-to-toe with Will Campbell and Emory Jones Jr. and those guys, 4 offensive linemen from that group that are going to be in this draft class. And the dude is he's winning. He is beating Will Campbell's hands, which are supposedly his strong suit, his signature thing, the clamping hands, that sort of thing. He's swiping them. He's batting them down. He's getting into Will Campbell's chest. He's driving him back. And having watched that game after the combine, when the testing came through, I started noticing, like, man, this guy's got a little more burst to him. He's got a little more wiggle to him than I think he's given credit for. Brings leadership to the table, experience. I think this is a guy that you could add to your rotation, and he could be that thoroughbred pass rusher that they're lacking in that department right now.
Zach, who's a guy you're eyeing?
Okay, so no trade back, and I guess all the guys that we talked about are off the board. It would come down to me between still wide receiver and edge, and that would be my wide receiver I'd pound the table for is Trey Harris. He has by far the highest grade versus man coverage of any wide receiver in this draft. He has a 95. I mean, a 95 versus man is, and in the SEC, that is pretty damn good. 5.12 yards per route run, which is, again, by far the highest in this draft. 17.2 yards per reception. He's got 7.7 yards after catch per reception, 78.9% reception percentage, 61.5% contested catch rate, and a 17.1% contested target rate, which is one of the lowest in the class. Is almost right there at the average, just a little bit below average. So I look at it and I go, that's a dude I'm willing to take a chance on in the second round. If you go and read The Beast by Dane Brugler, his dad has worked in the oil fields for over 30 years. It's where he gets a blue collar work ethic. And those who complain about him not having a route tree, go back and watch the 2023 tape before he joined Ole Miss in 2024. He was running the routes you want to see, and he was a pretty good route runner. I would go and take that chance because I also like that he worked his way up, went into the SEC, and dominated in the SEC as well. So he didn't kind of just stick around at Louisiana Tech. He actually went to a higher level of competition and still produced. And the other guy that I would pound the table for at edge rusher is JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. Dude's just good. I mean, there's just nothing wrong with him.
He's a good player.
Good against the run. He's good against the pass rusher. He's good in stats. He's good on film. He's good. So I'll take a good guy all day long. A great player all day long.
Man, Ole Miss is a pox on this house. Just a disease. I half facetiously have become an Ole Miss helmet scout in recent months. You all know this. I think that the next good Ole Miss skill player will be the first Ole Miss skill player that is good in the Lane Kiffin era, to be specific. We got that last crop of guys in AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, and it's been barren. There's been a drought out there. Tennessee gets a lot of crap for being the worst offense ever, which it is, but Ole Miss also the worst offense ever from an NFL standpoint. JT, I have a feeling I might know who the guy you're going to pound the table for is, but who are you? Who are you really after here at 35 if the other options are not available?
Well, just to tack on to some of these others, like all the guys that they've said at the edge rusher position, Landon Jackson, JTT, those guys, like I'm there. My big thing this entire draft cycle has become the edge rushers. Like I'm pretty okay. Like I like all these edge rushers outside of Jack Sawyer and Nick Squirton. Like any of these other guys on the board here, like you could just throw them up here. Good. Like the two guys in particular, Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss on that side of the ball. He's a little older, but there may be no higher potential for him, even though he is 23 years old, to still develop into a devastating speed to power rusher at the NFL level. There may not be a better fit there. Like taking him at 35, I think he has the production to do that. Led the SEC with 60 pressures last year, but also like the production is there. However, still like he has room to grow. And I think that is something worth looking at. And then Braden Swinson as well out of LSU, I think is another guy who also has really good speed to power. Those two guys, I think when you talk about the next level of edge rushers that all these guys fall into, it feels like there's a connotation that they're worse than some of those other guys. I think it's a different conversation. It's some of those guys have elite flashes or traits that you aren't getting with some of these guys. But for the sake of a better term, like these guys are all consistent that you would get at 35. Like these are all going to be good NFL players who can start day one and bring you production. And I think that's one of the biggest things.
Besides Scorton and Sawyer.
Besides Scorton and Jack Sawyer. Yes, those are the only two guys who
every edge that goes between pick 30 and 60, but besides those two will be good, is what you're saying.
That's my take on the edge class.
Right.
But I will say the guy that I'm banging the table for, Easton, and then he's our lone dynasty pick right now at the wide receiver position is Jalen Knoll out of Iowa State. He is one of my favorite players in this entire class. I don't think 35 would be a reach at all, considering he is continuing to skyrocket upwards more and more as we kind of figure out how teams feel about him. It seems like we are getting more and more that teams really, really like this guy. So he's moving up those boards in our mock drafts and our consensus big boards. He's undersized, of course, probably a guy who looks to play mostly in the slot, but he's one of the few guys in this class who I think can also play on the outside, despite being 5'11". On the outside. He has insane catch radius, is someone who has some of the best speed in the class. He led the combine in the broad and vertical jump. He was tied for the best in both of those. He has a killer 40 time and is just able to create separation on the edge or in the middle of the field. He's got a pretty gnarly route tree that I think he can do almost anything that you want him to do. And he's not afraid to put his body on the line and go up and catch that ball. You look at the Iowa State tape, there's a lot of underthrown balls that you don't think a 5'11" receiver should be able to come back and get against some of these corners. And he still finds a way to come down with it. Like, this is a guy that I think if you kind of place him into that Brian Callahan offense, he's another one just like Emeka Egbuka that I feel like is going to have the potential to be unbelievable in year one. And I think that's why he's one of my favorite wide receivers on day two.
All right, last question is essentially the same question. Looking at day three, where the Titans currently have a pair of 4s, a pair of 5s, a pair of 6s. This is where they're going to get the chance, like they've talked about, to just get some batting practice, right? Let's just get some swings and see if we can't find 1 or 2 or 3 dudes here that can contribute for us. Who are some guys, Stoney, back to you, who have caught your eye, not just because they're good players in this class, but because you think they'd be pretty good fits for what the Titans are looking for?
Yeah, so I still think that this front office has spent a lot of energy in interviews talking about building throughout the trenches. So I think on both sides of the ball, offense and defense, I think there's going to be some guys available on day 3 that kind of fit the mold of what they're looking for. I think about the massive left tackle out of Iowa State, Jalen Travis. I think he's powerful enough to play in the league. I think about the right guard out of LSU, Miles Frazier. I just talked about those LSU offensive linemen earlier. Big right guard that may have some potential to kick out to right tackle, a guy that could come in and be the heir apparent to Kevin Zeitler at that right guard spot. I think about Jackson Slater, the versatile interior guy out of Sacramento State, smaller school prospect that could be a succession plan at center. I think all of those guys should be in play. And on the defensive line, looking at a guy like Ty Robinson, plays really hard, does a lot of things really well. He's just a grinder, tough guy that's going to get some dirt on his uniform on the defensive line. So that's kind of where I'm leaning, is the trenches.
Love it. Zach, what do you think? Who are some guys that are on your mind?
It has to be safety for me.
Okay.
Because I think Brugler is right. And he had 4 top 100 safeties. And I think that that does not say anything about the safety class other than I think you're going to find a really good value. You got Imani Hooker, who is on a 1-year contract, or essentially a 1-year contract, last year of his contract. And then Xavier Woods, who is going to be 31 next year, going into the last year of his contract. And then you have Mike Brown. That's it. Unless they're going to put James Williams back at safety. That's what they got. Those are the only 3 NFL safeties they got on the roster.
Well, we saw this team with bad safeties at the end of last year. It went fine, right? That wasn't an issue.
Yeah. So I look at a guy, like Maxon Hook, who is the safety out of Toledo. He really stood out at the Senior Bowl to me. I think that he's a guy that is really good against the run. He has one of the lower missed tackle rates in this draft class. I really like how dependable he is. I look at a guy like Malachi Moore, who I think is severely underrated in this draft class, and I think it's because he kicked a helmet. And listen, he's average size. He's average athleticism. But like it's kind of like Shadur Sanders for me. The stuff that he has between the ears, his play recognition, his diagnosing is some of the best in this draft class. And I think that you look at a guy that has 7 pass breakups, which is more than what Xavier Watts has. Now, Xavier Watts has more interceptions, but this guy's always around the ball. He allows one of the lowest yards per snap in this class as well. And I think you look at him and you're like, okay, that's your coverage guy at the next level. And then another guy that I really like, Craig Woodson out of California. I like every California defender that's in this draft class. Craig Woodson, Teddy Buchanan, Noel Williams, and Marcus Harris. Like I was asking Stoney as like, we need the list of all the coaches that are on this California defense, because those are the guys that should be in the NFL at the next level. Like if this whole thing fails in 2025 and Denard Wilson has shown the door, let's go just poach all the California guys, because like these guys are, I mean, every one of these defenders are really good and NFL players. And I think Craig Woodson has the size that you're looking for. He's a controlled fluid mover as well. He like, again, kind of like Malachi Moore, not dominant size or traits, that, make him jump off the film, but everything that you want out of a safety, this is the guy that I would take. And he's a guy that could be there in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. And so to me, I'm looking at these guys, these safeties that, again, this is where you found Amani Hooker a couple of years ago. This is, Kevin Byard was 3rd round, but I mean, like all these guys that you have been able to find over the years, this seems like a good safety class for day 3. I think that is where the true value is going to be a safety, running back, and linebacker on day 3.
All right, JT, bring us home. Who are some day 3 names that are on your mind?
Yeah, just to tack on one more safety, Jonas Sanker out of Virginia is one that I think he could end up finding a way, just because of how he's built with the arm length, 32.5-inch arms, 6'3", 206, 4.48 40. Like he could find his way into the top 100, but if he's not, and at 103, I think that's fine there. I think you look at the tight ends. If they were to look at a tight end on day 3, I think the one and only option I'd go with that I think is worthy of being on people's radars is Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech. Another way that they could go, they still don't have that inline blocker on their roster. So I think you could find him in just plug and play him. He's one of the best inline blockers in this class. And I don't think, even if you're drafting a guy like that in the 5th or 6th and you say, wow, this guy, all he does is be an inline blocker and extra basically tackle on 12 personnel. Well, Brian Callahan ran more 12 personnel last year than like almost anyone, it seemed like. So like, I think he is a guy that would fit in that offense really well. You look at some of these, the one position that we haven't talked about like at all, and yet the Titans are doing more digging on that position than any other one, it seems like, is the defensive tackle position, which I think is very, very interesting. You look at a lot of those guys on day 2 that they continue to look at in Darius Alexander, TJ Sanders, and one guy who I think could fall into the 4th round, which is Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. I think he could be another one that there's the conversation to say, like, does this indicate that a Jeffrey Simmons trade is upcoming? If you want to go that route, you can. There's also just following the Philadelphia Eagles model of getting greedy at the position that you're already really good at, because you're going to need them eventually. And they could be taking a play out of that book, right? Getting greedy at that position. And so he's another guy that I really, really like if he was there on day 4 and he fits that model. He's met with them. And then two corners that I really, really like. Quincy Riley, just might as well just go get Jarvis Brownlee Jr.'s counterpart and just have basically 2 Jarvis Brownlee Jr.'s on that offense. He fits the Denard Wilson model to a T. I really, really like him. And then Zaw Frazier out of I think Texas San Antonio, right?
Yeah.
He's just got the absolute frame and build that you want for a corner on the outside. Also has some speed to boot as well. He's one of my favorites as well.
All right. Well, there's like 30 names for you guys, and I would keep an eye on all of those guys. I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few of the folks we named end up becoming Tennessee Titans here in a couple of weeks. That is officially the second longest interview in this series that we've done. We were only doubled by my interview with Brian Callahan, which is kind of cheating. And it also helps that there were 4 of us. But I appreciate all of you guys' time. Before we go, tell the A to Z audience where they can find you guys, because as rising stars in the national media market, as you all are, I think that we can continue to bolster what is obviously some of the best analysts here in town. JT, or what are you up to these days? What's going on?
Still owning and producing your former podcast, the Hot Read podcast, over on the
your podcast. Yeah, I heard it got way better left, which is
people are saying it got infinitely better once you left. So
right.
that's the word on the street, I guess.
Well,
but yes, Hot Read podcast over on 440 Sports Network. Also writing with these guys over here on Stacking the Inbox. Just doing that, as well as you can find me on Twitter at JT_Ruhnke, tweeting about the Mets way into the summer when nobody wants to hear from me.
Yep, pain and suffering. Stoney?
Yeah, so I'm at Stacking the Inbox, where depending on when this is released, our draft guide is out or is coming out pretty soon. I show up on Football and Other F Words Thursday nights. I'm on the Hot Read podcast. I'm on Sobros Network. I have a book of poetry for sale on Amazon too. I do a little bit of everything, so not too hard to find at Stoney Keeley.
And if I'm not mistaken, you're also available for candle expertise bookings as well.
I am.
Podcast writing, whatever may be needed. Right. And then Zach, where can folks find you?
Cover 2, 1 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Lord's time, here Monday through Friday over on 104.5 The Zone with Blaine Bishop. And then Football and Other F Words, typically Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, we go live. And then, of course, stackinginbox.com. And wherever I may be screaming into the void that Ellick Io Manor is not very good, and he's also Canadian, so you might as well just throw that guy into the trash because he ain't going to do anything, because Canadians do not do anything at the NFL level. So just want to throw that out there as well. So that could be seen on Twitter at the Zach Lyons.
Lame of you to throw that out there without any time to rebut. Fine. That's classic Zach. We'll be all together once again, at least for a brief period of time, on day 3 on the F Word stream in the 104.5 studios on day 3 when the Titans have a pair of 4th round picks. At least they currently have a pair of 4th round picks to spend. So check us out then. Until then, guys, thanks for hanging out.